All right, welcome everybody to this remote interview. My name is Lisette and I'm interviewing people and companies doing great things remotely. And today on the line, all the way from the Republic of Cyprus, I have Michael Dubakov. Michael, you are the co-founder and CEO of Fibery, which is an all-in-one work management platform. We're going to get into that, but I want to start with our opening question, which is, what does your virtual office look like? What do you need in order to get your work done?
Yeah, hi Lizette, thank you for having me. So I'd say I'm very aesthetic here, and well, I need only laptop and headphones, and I can work from anywhere. So I work from living room, from outside if the weather is good. I can work in a coffee shop, so I don't really need anything, just a laptop, headphones, and internet connection, and I can adapt to almost any environment. And to be honest, I wanted to show you some fancy stuff like huge monitors, but I really don't need anything like that to do my work done. So that's basically maybe the most boring part of this podcast.
No, but I'm curious, in your ideal office setup, what would you have? So, you can go anywhere with just a laptop and headphones, but like in your ideal workspace, what do you really need? You must have multiple monitors.
Yeah, I soon moved to my new location in Limassol, and I hope finally I have a working room. And then I'll definitely set up a table that change like a height, and I will have a huge monitor to do some creative tasks. Since again, when you work with knowledge and let's say I read a lot about AI and things like that, and I want to organize information and access quickly to make connections and so on. And for this part of things, task, you have to work on a large monitor, since you can see many pieces of information like move around and things like that. But only for that. So if I communicate with people or writing, I tend to focus and I tend to open only single application and just hide all the noise, since focusing is really important when you do like creative task or talking with someone. Since again, when we're working remotely, we have tendency, okay, we have a conversation, but in the background we can switch, check some emails, do some stuff. And to me, it's kind of people feel it. They're feeling that you don't really pay a lot of attention, and it just makes communication not very cool. So something like that.
All right. So for referencing information, you want the real estate of the monitor so you can have all the different pieces of information that you have up. But for focused, concentrated work, or when you're talking with somebody, you just have one application open or just the bare minimum so that you're not distracted by all the other stuff around you.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Yeah, and indeed, people think that we can't tell when they're multitasking, but we very much can tell when people are multitasking. They miss information. And simply, all the research shows that we're not very good multitaskers as workers also. So there is a myth there. We're going to get on to all this workflow process. What I want to talk about is Fibery, your tool. I want to quickly touch on what the tool does, because it's super interesting for remote workers, of course, but then I also want to talk about how you're working, because if I understand correctly, you're a fully remote team with almost 30 people all across 5 different countries. And so you're operating in a fully remote manner. But let's talk about Fibery. Give us a quick description about what it is and why did you develop it?
Fibery is like a single connected workspace for teams. Basically, it unites work and knowledge processes together in a single tool. So my previous company, Target Process, we worked on some agile stuff like Scrum, Kanban processes for software development companies. And we learned that, you have to have so many tools in the company to be efficient, to operate as a company. And we got an idea to create a single one that can replace, 5, 10 tools, and that unites all work and knowledge together. It's a very challenging thing to do, you can imagine. But we spent like 5 years on it already, and I'd say we only started to understand what it is. We use it a lot, and hundreds of companies are using it, but still it's kind of really exploratory process. Basically, we do all our work in Fibery. Like we accumulate all knowledge. We have like our internal documentation in Fibery. We do all our strategic planning, accumulate feedback from our customers on our product. We plan our releases and so on. So anything. The only other tool we are really using is Slack. So for communication, for async communication, it's important to have something like close to real time, like with emojis, like fancy stuff. So Fibery and Slack is our major tool set. We envision how we can like embed Slack into Fibery, like replace Slack as well. It's like a next step for us, maybe next year. But so far, I'd say we only have these two major tools. And I'd say 80% of time we do stuff in Fibery, 20% time in Slack. And we also use Zoom for calls. So I'd say this is the only major tools that we use as a remote company to communicate and to work, basically. So that's like in a nutshell.
So I love it. So I've loved for years and years and years, I've always loved the concept of an all-in-one tool where you could do everything. You don't have to leave the environment of one particular tool, right? So that you don't have your Slack connected with your Jira, connected with your, Asana, with your Basecamp, everything. You don't have like a million tools because very many people complain about there are too many tools. How do you then convince people to go from the environment of too many tools into just one? And does it restrict how they work when you do that?
Yeah, this is the hard part, since it's kind of novel approach, and people really don't believe us. So they think that it's not kind of possible, and but when we show them how we work and how they can work, how they can connect information together, like work, knowledge together, how workflows can change and simplify if you have a single tool. They wanted to try, after that. So a real demo really helps, We definitely try to convince people, like using some marketing materials on our website and so on. But we learned that two things really work. Customer stories. So we have a lot of customers already, like hundreds, and they are really cool, and they like share stories, how they work, and basically we invent things together, since we learned that Fibery is an all-in-one tool for a company from our customers. Initially, we advertised it differently, like just tool for product teams and so on, but our customers started to use it for everything. And that's how we changed our position, basically. So customer stories really work, and live demo really works. So when we have like a curious lead, I'd say, and we do a demo, there is a very good opportunity that it will resonate with the person, and they will try to do something in Fibery.
All right. And we will, I'm sure, talk about how your team uses Fibery to organize itself throughout the conversation. But I want to talk about how your team organizes yourself. So you said you're now fully remote. Have you always been fully remote?
Oh, that's a very interesting story. So we were a fully co-located company in Minsk, Belarus, like 3 years ago. But then, it was a crisis, political crisis in Belarus, and Belarus, turned into a dictatorship, basically. And almost all people from our team, left Belarus and moved to other countries like Poland, Cyprus, and things like that. And well, we had to become a remote company, and we are a fully remote company now. So it was not like our decision, but it was it just happened, So it was inevitable for us to operate as remote. And yeah, now we are a full remote company with 30 people on board, working across 7 countries right now. And it's an interesting experience of this transformation. We can speak about it if you'd like.
Oh, yeah, I would very much like to speak about that. So it's very curious. Most people went remote because of the pandemic. You went remote because of political unrest and people actually leaving the country. So really by necessity. So when the pandemic came along, you guys were ready to roll with all that remote had to offer, I can imagine.
It was the same year, so let's say. So we
Okay.
basically we were hit by pandemic and by the political crisis, so
At the same
almost
time.
at the same time. Yeah.
Okay, nothing like a 1-2 punch to get get change going. So I would like to actually then discuss, like, what were some of the challenges that you had going from being completely co-located to remote? What are the things that were really hard for your team?
I'd say initially we didn't change our processes much. So we somehow tried to operate as a co-located company. And quite quickly we realized that it just doesn't work. So you have to change your working processes. And I'd say a major shift is that you don't have unexpected sudden communication. Like you don't have a lunch together to discuss things over the table and things like that. So, and we had to rely on documents, on writing more. So all your ideas suddenly, like crazy or good ideas, you have to write them to present to people. And since you don't have like any other time, and basically we shifted from a company with lateral knowledge dispersed across people and without much like written down, to a company that writes down almost anything, like all ideas, all features, all tasks are just inside our tool, inside Fibery. And that was the most maybe challenging and interesting transition for us. And you just have to change your sync processes to async processes, I'd say. It's the most important one. And initially, it kind of was okay, but after 2 years of remote, we started to miss each other. We hired a couple of new people, and but again, the experience we had when we worked together really helped us to maintain the connections, you know. But after 2 years, we felt that they start to deteriorate, you know, and we want to solve this problem with our first retreat, in May on Cyprus. So we want to gather together on a full week and have a beautiful time, I expect, and to build connections, to, you know, discuss anything like work, like personal things together. So I'd say these two problems were the most challenging for us.
All right. So going from an environment where you can overhear what's happening and sort of people are together, to one where all of a sudden you need to document all the random ideas and things that are coming up. How did you make a decision as a company to do this? How did you get everybody on board, or did you get everybody on board?
Yeah, I'd say, well, it was maybe my observation that we are having like problems in our process. So I kind of process-oriented guy. I try to think like on a system level, you know, how we operate, what works, what doesn't work. I really write a lot, and I used to write a lot. So to me, it was a very easy transition. But yeah, it was like my observation, and we had a conversation about what we can do, what we should change, and so on. So it was relatively easy, I'd say, task, but the problem here was to spot it, you know, to really spot that we have this problem. When we spotted it, it was not so hard to invent a solution, since we are engineers and engineers like to solve problems.
Totally. It's not a bad group of people to have a problem with, that's for sure. How do you do feedback? What are your feedback processes like in your organization? Do you have regular retrospectives? How do you do it as an organization? How do teams organize themselves? What do your feedback loops look like in general?
I'd say we are still very chaotic here. We are very flat as a company. We don't really like managers, I'd say, and we try have only people that do real stuff, you know. And we try to solve this problem using, I'd say, our culture. So we try to hire people that don't need any supervision, and they very autonomous, and they don't really need feedback loop, like about their growth, how to put it, things like that. So they like have some direction, some like area in the product they are focusing on. And we definitely have a discussion about work, but we rarely have discussion about how you should grow as a person, how you should improve your knowledge. Since, in my opinion, and again, we try to hire people that do all these things by themselves. It's maybe not scalable to a huge enterprise, but it can be scaled to at least 100 to 300 of people, I believe, at least. And that's how we try to solve this problem. I don't really like one-on-one meetings. We do have some, but very, very limited. I have maybe one-on-one with 2 people in like our company, like weekly. And maybe it will change in the future. But so far, it kind of works for us, I'd say. We like people don't like work conditions, they like the cultures, they like the companies, they don't leave, you know, and we have like 0 churn in our company in terms of person, I mean. So I think it works pretty well.
How do you find people that can work autonomously, happily? What's your secret for hiring people that
this
are
is
like
the hardest
this?
part.
Yeah, right?
You know.
So,
Yeah,
but what do you look for in people?
yeah, we look for, well, basically, I say it's easier for introverts first. I understand that it's kind of challenging to distinguish introvert from extrovert, but it's possible. Introverts are kind of not suffering so much working remotely as other people, since for extroverts you have to have this whole flow of communication and so on, and you can kind of emulate it in Slack, but still it's not live conversation.
Not the same, right?
So and most engineers are introverts, so this part is easy. But if we speak about like market and sales people, it's much harder to understand how this person will work remotely. So definitely previous experience helps. So if this person already like worked remotely in one company for 1-2 years, this person understands what it is, you know, and maybe as an extrovert, he will compensate lack of communication like outside work, like in some communities, I know friends and things like that. And we definitely ask questions about autonomy, how you make decision, what kind of like communication with the manager you had and or want to have in the future, so things like that. So we try to understand how autonomous a person can be. Still, it's a very challenging. You know, you can ask any kind of question and still don't understand in the end. So maybe it's kind of gut feeling, intuition. We did some mishires, not many, just a few. But yeah, we are learning, and it's still very hard. So I don't have any secret like souls here. Like you just try to look for autonomy and ask a bunch of questions, very concrete questions about real experience, what you really did. Like a person should provide some real examples and not just say some general words about it.
Right. And also during a job interview, people are on their best behavior, right? So they're always saying what you want to hear, you know, just to see how far we can get. So it's always really hard to, everybody says hiring is a real challenge because we're really trying to figure it out. However, I want to go to how you're organizing yourself as a team. And I want to ask, do you have any sort of like, you say you're a documentation culture, but do you document like how you work together, like how you agree to work together? Do you have anything like that, like an agreement of these are our core hours and this is when we're expected to be online? Is there any sort of company handbook like that?
Yeah, we have our process documented, and it's public, by the way. It can be accessible by link from our website. I can share a link with you if you want.
Yeah, I would love to see it.
We have a documented and all major parts of our process, like how we like document features, how we start features, how we like implement features, how we release, how we like use customer feedback, where to put it, how to handle it, and so on. So I'd say it's well documented with enough details for external person to understand how we work and what to expect from us, and things like that. In terms of working hours, we are very, very relaxed here. So we just don't have any like mandatory working hours. You can work anytime you want. If you are like a night person, you can work like 3 a.m. It's your choice, basically. Since as an async company, we have this luxury, basically. For some people, like for maybe customer success, it's harder since you have incoming requests from our customers during like some period of time, and you have to be there to answer. But for engineers, it's very relaxed, and we really don't track time. We just trust people by default, and that's why people really like to work with our company, basically.
Have you ever had anybody abuse the trust?
Hard to say, since we don't track it, we don't really see it. Again, it becomes visible on a long period of time, like 2-3 months, I'd say. It happens that some person started to under-deliver even in a month's period of time. Then we have a conversation, but it's not like a culture, or you didn't deliver something last week and we have a strong talk with you. So we are not like that. People are complex things, and sometimes they are just not in the mood to deliver like their full potential. They want to somehow work in a relaxed condition for a week to recover, recharge. We understand that maybe you should take a vacation, but still, it's very complex. And as a remote company, we just don't want to build very, how to put it, very restrictive culture that you should work inside. So we hire people that are really like curious about our domain, our problems that we are solving, and curiosity is your engine. So if you're curious, you will work good, and that's what we are trying to cultivate here.
How do you measure the results for people? How do you compare and measure that?
We really don't, so it's very hard to do, since even if you are a software developer, let's say, it's very hard to do. You can create a feature in a week, or you can create a feature in a month, and it's hard to compare them. There are unexpected technical details, technical problems, and if you really want to do that, you have to dig very, very deep and understand very deep what this person really did. So we really don't do that. What we do, we have a daily channel in our Slack, and every person write a list of things he did yesterday and a list of things he's going to do today, and it works as a pulse of a company. So we as a company read all these daily reports and understand what a person really did. And if you did nothing, it will be hard for you to write something down here. So it's kind of a very relaxed mechanism of like enforcement of your work, but that is it, basically.
Well, in a way, it's also peer pressure, right? Like if your peers are starting to notice what's happening, I think that's probably, people start to question what you do, then that's also a flag. So I can imagine that is even enough.
Yeah, exactly. We had some examples where a person came to us and say, well, I think this person is not delivering and we should have a conversation. It happens, but it's very rare.
Right. People are more focused. I would say I always call them the George Costanzas, the Seinfeld character, George Costanza, who's always trying to get away with not doing any work. Like there's always one and, in a group, in a big group of people, but usually you can figure out who they are. Now, you mentioned before that you have a flat organizational structure, like a flat management. Why did you structure it that way? And tell me a little bit about how decisions get made if there are very few managers.
Well, we have several areas of our company, like marketing, like product and technical things. And well, in these areas, we have leaders. Let's say in the product area, we have 2 leaders, and they're responsible for their part of a product, and they make decision how to do things like in this part. In marketing, we have another leader, and this leader make decision about what to do. In technical, we have a group that makes the decision. It's not a single person. It's called CTO group, like not a single CTO, but a group of people that like work like that. Well, basically, there are many like holacracy, you know, like teal organization. There are many ways to restructure a business and have as less managers as possible. You can't get rid of them. Like I hoped to do that in my previous company, I failed. So now I think you should have them, but as few as possible. So that's the recipe. And I imagine we will have more, but at our current size, we just have leaders. And if we have a decision about like people, should we like hire people, should we fire someone, we usually make a decision as a group of responsible like people in this area. So it's kind of close to holacracy, but it's not formalized, I'd say, in our company. I mean, it's kind of internal knowledge, but it's not a formalized piece of knowledge so far.
And what happens when there's conflict?
Surprisingly, we had, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 conflicts last 2 years. I don't know, maybe a remote culture just reduce conflicts, since you communicate mostly like async, you know, or like, and these talks are not as emotional maybe as real like conversation with real people. So I don't know how we'll resolve conflicts in future, but right now on conflicts like they're escalated to me. But again, since we had only 2, as I remember, it's not a problem to me to solve them. So I just gather people and we talk, you know. But we don't have any formal process yet.
Because you would think that with an async or a text-based culture that there would be more conflict because we misread, you know, like when we're talking face-to-face or even e-face to e-face, there's so much more information. So you would think that with less information, you might have more conflict, but in your company, it's proving to be actually not a problem. Like with less information, we're having less conflict.
I say less emotions, maybe. It's more like... Correct, since information is not produce conflicts. Conflicts produce when you maybe overreact to something, you know, and have a bad expression on your face, something like that. And you have to, you have less of that when you work remotely.
Right. Love it. Love it. All right. So, and I'm noticing the time, we're running out of time, but I've got a couple more questions for you, if that's okay with you. One question that I had. Okay, good. Thank you. One question that I have is around burnout. And one of the things that we saw during the pandemic was just people working way too much, because we can work anytime, any place, anywhere, right? So people are working that much. How do you manage well-being with the people and your colleagues at Fibery? How do you make sure that people aren't burning out?
Yeah, that's a really important problem that we discussed. And at Fibery, we have 2 practices. First, we provide a paid 1 month vacation. So if you are really burnt out and you know, you feel it when you are, and people around you feel it as well. And it's quickly become obvious. So this person is kind of not okay. And we have a conversation, we see that burnout is a problem. We provide a month's vacation. So it's like on top of your usual vacation, and you can take that and relax, basically. That's one thing. It helped in some cases. It didn't help in other cases. It depends. Sometimes you need maybe 6 months to recover. Okay. Another thing we do is like put people into some relaxed work mode, I'd say. So like, okay, we understand that you are not okay right now, so please do your best and recover as soon as possible. And till that, don't punish yourself because you are not 100% productive. So if you do something and it's valuable, it's good enough for today. Okay, so move forward slowly from task to task. We try to promote it as a culture in our company. I'd say we had a couple of people with burnout, maybe 5 last 2 years. It's enough. I mean, taking into consideration that we are not a large company. Yeah, and from my opinion, almost all of them got better after these things. So they recovered. I took a 1 month vacation, let's say last year in August, since I felt that I was doing not a great job and I have to switch off from my work, and it helped really. So yeah.
Yeah, it's such a difficult one because people manifest burnout in such different ways, right? We all have different symptoms around it. For some people, it just takes us down completely. And for others, you can keep going, but you're kind of a zombie the whole time. For others, you just get really irritable, right? Like it's really hard to understand what's happening. So I like when you said like burnout is not just about you, but it's also the people around you, like that it does really affect the people around you because one, people care about you and your hearts are connected in that way. So, like if somebody's in pain, the other person feels it. So, to different extents, depending on how close people are, but also, when you're irritable, you're not very nice to be around. So it's also good to sort of address burnout in that way. Okay. So then last couple of questions. My first one is the secrets to good workflow processes. You guys have been documenting your workflow in Fibery for years now. What's some advice that you can give to companies who might just be starting out with documentation? What would you tell people? Where to start, what to do? What tips do you have?
Well, one obvious tip is to try Fibery.
Of course.
Go to our website to register an account and so on. Yeah, basically the advice is to find a good tool, since when you work remotely, tools are becoming really important. When you work in an office, you can just use whiteboard, I don't know, and sticky notes. And when you're working remotely, you have to have good tools and tools that respect remote workflows and so on. It definitely the tool should do many things, in my opinion. Again, there are two trends. Like you can have very, very specific tools for a task, or you can have more general tools that maybe connect things, but not as specific. So my advice is to try to find a general tool. Since the less tool you have, the easier will be your workflow, since you will not have to switch your tools often, and it's kind of hard to explain, but you just feel it. When you start to work in the tool, you just start to feel how it really changes your workflow, how you work, how you navigate from your knowledge to your task, back to knowledge, back to your feedback from your customers and so on, back to your CRM in a single environment. And, it's just very unique experience. So there are not only Fibery that doing it, there are other tools, but I advise you to go this way. And definitely try to find a good sync tool, like a chat. We recommend Slack, let's say. I really love Slack and how it works and so on. So this kind of tool plus Slack will be a very good starting point for your communication, for your work and knowledge. Yeah, so.
I love that. So really use a good tool and check out Fibery if you're looking for workflow management. We'll put, of course, a link in the show notes to that.
Yes,
But I think it is a good reminder to take our tooling seriously, because indeed in the office, you can just you can be sloppy about our processes and how we store things. But when we go remote, that will really start to it'll eat up a lot of time when those things are not done well. So you really want to have a good documentation culture. Last question, super easy one, which is if people want to learn more about you, I'll of course put Fibery in the show notes, but if people want to learn more about you, what's the best place to find you online? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Twitter? Where can people find you?
I'm relatively active on Twitter. So it's Dubakov in Twitter. And Well, our blog in fibery.io, I write a lot, and there are many articles I wrote in our blog about how you work as a team, startup culture, things like that. So some of them are relatively good, I'd say. So you might enjoy them.
Love it. All right. So the blog at fibery.io and on Twitter at @Dubakov. And I'll put all of those in the show notes as well so that people can easily find that.
Thank you.
Michael, thank you so much for speaking with me today and for sharing your story and all of the different challenges that you've encountered and the things that you've done to sort of experiment with those challenges. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth, for having me. It was a pleasure.
And to everybody, until next time, be powerful.